My guest today is David Hayes Cox. He has written This is a Gun, a safety guide for families with children. How are you, David? And I am very intrigued by this because I think that a lot of people think, especially if they're anti-gun, not anti-gun, but anti-violent. And, I'm a big guy, 6'10". Would I ever think about, am I ever going to carry a gun? Am I ever going to have a gun in specific situations? The more I become a public figure, that's something to consider because you never know the crazies out there. So this is going to be a real good education for me because maybe 13 years ago, I've been like, no way. But now more than ever, I get concerned about these things. So tell me a little about what is your background in gun safety?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Doing well. My background is being a firearms enthusiast for over 20 years. I started training about 2 decades ago under a firearms instructor named Scotty Reitz. He runs a large training center out in Los Angeles. And then after that, it was a hobby that I was passionate about for a long time. Eventually, I got my certifications through the NRA to become a firearms instructor, a firearm home safety instructor, and then a range safety officer as well. And that brings me to today. I've also held concealed carry permits in a number of different states.
Wow. Okay. All right. And so what before we kind of get into this, so were you always a gun advocate or somebody who believed that we needed a gun for protection?
No, and I just want to be clear. I'm definitely a person that enjoys the shooting sport. I'm a person that believes in personal safety and the Second Amendment, but I'm not here as an advocate for guns. What I am here is an advocate for gun safety.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Sure that
Okay,
that is
but you're
clear.
for it, but you don't like. I understand. I'm glad you brought that up for our listeners because I think I think safety is huge because why have a gun if you can't protect, or if you're not able to keep it safe from children, families, other people that how many gun accidents happen all the time that are gun related injuries or death because of a gun because of not being properly trained.
Exactly. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for the safety, and I'm here to advocate for training. That's what I believe in.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, I wouldn't. I didn't think that your book would be. It's basically that way. Okay, but that's good that you definitely told me that. So why does avoiding the gun conversation make kids less safe?
This is a really important thing for everybody to understand, but especially for the non-gun owning parents in America, which is that the numbers have to be considered. There are between 400 to 500 million guns in the hands of civilians in America. A number that large must be addressed. I don't care what the item is, whether it's a gun or another dangerous tool, if there is something that could harm our children and there is that many of them throughout the country, we need to, as parents, warn our children about them and make sure that they're educated to the point where if they come across one, that they will know what to do. Because right now, between 40 and 52% of American families have a firearm at home. What that means is that your elementary school age child is in a classroom of potentially 30 other children. And right now, they're sitting in a classroom making friends with children. Between 10 and 15 of them potentially have firearms at home. And I'm not saying that those parents that own those firearms are doing anything dangerous. All I'm saying is that we aren't in control of environments that we're not in control of. And that means that when we're sending our child over to a friend's house to play, we need to at least arm our children with an education so that they can identify what a firearm looks like and they are given the language to get away from that firearm and go find an adult and take them out of any situation, whether it be peer pressure or just curiosity in itself. We need to be able to give them the language to go, hey, wait a minute, I don't want to see that firearm, or, oh, this is a firearm. We need to get out of here right now and go find an adult.
So if we have guns, we should tell our kids we have them. It sounds
Absolutely.
okay.
It is a really important thing, especially if you own guns, that you have that conversation with your kids. What you don't want to have happen is guns turn into this forbidden fruit and they get curious about them. And the statistics show that more children than not know that their parents own firearms, whether the parents have had that conversation with their child or not. It is something that eventually, it's really hard. If you own a firearm, kids are very curious in general. They know everything that's going on in your house, whether you realize it or not, eventually. And so what you don't want to have happen is for them to know, oh yeah, I think dad keeps the firearm, up on the kitchen, in the kitchen cabinet, out of reach. You don't want your child to be thinking this in their head. What you want to be doing is making sure that that firearm is locked and secured, where your child, even if they stumbled across it, cannot access or operate it. But two, they should know that these firearms exist and that you have a safety protocol in place, and that is something that they should never touch until they're old enough to be trained properly.
And I think that this is piggybacking on the last question. What role can parents play in educating their kids about gun safety?
Yeah, so yeah, just exactly what we've been sharing here, which is that it's up to us as parents. I have two children, 7 and 8 years old, a boy and a girl,
Mhm.
and it's up to us to educate our kids. We really have to make sure that they understand that they could come across a firearm. If they're playing with a friend or if they're out playing in the woods, there are just that many firearms in existence in this country that they are unfortunately stumbled upon. And we need to make sure that our children have the language, because our kids don't know on their own. We think,
Right.
I come from a very blue state. I was raised in Massachusetts. There was no discussion of guns in our house. The words were not uttered in our
Right.
house.
Pennsylvania, never my parents talked about guns ever.
Yeah, ever, ever, ever. And that's because parents are scared. They think, oh, if I just avoid the conversation entirely, my child will be safe. But the fact is that if we avoid it entirely and your child actually does stumble into a situation, all they have in their heads is positive information about firearms.
Right.
Because what have they done? How have they been exposed to firearms? They've been exposed through possibly video games, TV shows where heroes use firearms, cartoons where heroes use firearms. All squirt guns are fun, Nerf guns are fun. All of the information they have in their head, if we've never discussed guns with our children, is positive information.
Interesting.
If they come across one in the wild, they see something familiar and they're curious, and they will run towards that and not away from it. We cannot assume that our children will just know instinctively to run away from that. And you have to think about all the other dangerous devices in our house:
Yeah.
electrical sockets, stoves, knives.
We educate them on that.
Exactly. We educate them about all these things because we know that children are inherently curious. They're going to run towards those things, not away from them, until
Yeah.
we've given them that information that it's
And
dangerous.
if we don't even own a gun and we don't advocate guns, or but we still need to educate people, because you see I don't know if you saw this news article, a 6-year-old shot a teacher. I don't
Yes.
know if you, that absolutely was horrific. I did it on another podcast, the topic with Dr. Gilda Carl on this, and I was blown away. And that 6-year-old's in trouble. I mean, imagine, we don't know if you're right. He's used to just seeing as heroes. How many of them have firearms every day? But they don't even bring that up in the conversation. They make that 6-year-old the villain when ultimately that 6-year-old might have thought it was a toy.
That's exactly right. And this is such a horrible, tragic situation. And I just would hope that, if the parents had given that child, I don't actually know where the child got that gun, if it was from an older brother or
I
sister.
haven't heard anything in that story,
I
so
don't
I'll
know
have to.
where the
Yeah,
child acquired that gun from, but we would hope that, if the parents had taken the time earlier on to educate the child about the dangers of firearms and the fact that a firearm can make a person die. This is a conversation that you have to have about death. And there is a page in my book that covers death, which is that a firearm can cause a person to die, and it means you won't get to see them again. And it's an opportunity for parents to have that initial conversation with their child, and it's an important one to have. We hope that by educating our children, it takes firearms off the table for younger kids, because most kids in general do want to follow rules if it's something that has been brought up time and time again,
right.
right?
And we don't talk about it in schools either.
We
Do
don't.
we ever? We don't. No.
Almost no schools have any kind of gun safety information anymore. There's a few schools scattered throughout the country that are implementing some basic pistol training at older ages, and I think that's great. But in general, we don't have any kind of firearm safety information. And I like to bring up, I'm kind of dating myself, but when I was a kid, we had the Stop, Drop, and Roll campaign
Yeah, I
just
remember that.
drilled into us, right? We'd see it
Mm-hmm.
on TV, we'd hear it on the radio. The government really wanted us all to know
Right.
what to do in the case of a house fire, right? Now, kids today won't know anything about that. But back then, when electrical wiring was a little bit more unreliable and there were more house fires occurring, the government said, "Hey, we need to let kids know what to do. Stop, drop, and roll." And right now, what we have is about a million guns a month are being sold in America. And I'm not here to judge that number at all, but about a million guns a month are being sold in America. Again, the number 400 to 500 million guns in civilian hands. Uh, I'm not here to judge that number. I want to keep repeating that. I'm just here to tell you that that is the number. That is what the number is. And because of that, we owe it to our children to have the conversation. Don't touch, run away, find an adult. That's as simple as it gets.
Exactly. And I mean, but I just thought of this. I mean, this is why I think this is groundbreaking. I said I've been doing interviews for 15 plus years and interviewed thousands and thousands, I mean, hundreds of thousands, not 100,000, but 20, 30,000 people on my show. And I have never had this conversation with this subject matter. And how many gun related deaths are there a year?
That's the tragic thing. When it comes to accidental discharges, where a child or a teen has picked up a gun and manipulated it in a way to make it go off and it's caused an injury or a death, there are several hundred deaths and severe injuries every single year that could be completely avoided. Completely avoided. We can make this number drop by 50, 60, 70, 80%. What we've seen is the evidence is very clear in all of these other domains of safety information. If you give your children swimming lessons, their chance of drowning drops 88%. That's the statistic. If you,
Right.
if you educate your child on how to identify a firearm and what to do if they see one, your child's chance of causing an accident with that firearm, that percentage is going to drop. And of course, we don't have studies yet to talk about these numbers, but if we just rely on previous data about other safety domains, and you can go to my website, I'm going to plug the website if you don't mind.
That's fine.
This is a gun.org. You can see the evidence of all of these other safety domains and how much reduction in hazardous accidents and deaths occur once we've educated our children across all of these domains. So why would guns be any different? They aren't any different.
Yeah.
But there's just so much stigma around the idea of guns for good reason. Good reason that there's stigma around guns for certain parts of the country. I understand why. There's a lot of pain and suffering going on in this country, and there's a lot of people that are they have no understanding of firearms and they're scared. And I understand why they would have this natural inclination to just keep those words out of their mouths when it comes to their kids. But that's what's causing these accidental deaths.
100%.
If we didn't tell our kids about electrical outlets, we would be seeing crazy amounts of injuries and accidents from kids sticking forks in electrical outlets or pennies or whatever. If we didn't tell them about these things, the accidental deaths from electrical outlet would just skyrocket, right?
Or
But
poison control.
exactly, poison control.
Mr. Yuck. If we didn't have Mr. Yuck campaigns and all that stuff, people would be, when they drink something they shouldn't drink, they wouldn't tell their parents and then they'd be dead if we didn't have campaigns like that.
Exactly. So the answer to keeping our kids safe is always education. It's what we've grown up understanding. Education is empowerment. Education keeps us safe, right?
Right.
So don't ignore guns, please. That's what I'm just telling parents out there. Don't ignore it. Don't think because you live in a blue state that guns don't affect you, because the matter is that even in the bluest of states, in the lower 48, the percentage of gun ownership is still around 25%. So
Right.
that means in your classroom, yeah, there's still about possibly 5 to 8 kids in your classroom, potentially with homes with firearms. It just means that your child has a very high likelihood going from K through fifth grade that they're going to play at a house that
Totally.
a parent has a firearm. And again, I'm saying these parents not necessarily are doing anything dangerous. They probably are all very safe, keeping their guns locked up. But again, we can't control environments that we are not in control of. And that means that we can empower our kids, just like we teach them how to look both ways before they cross the street, right? We send them out into the neighborhood knowing that they've learned this lesson so that we feel safe when they cross the street. We need to send them out into the world and to go play at friends' houses knowing that they've learned that if they see a gun, They know that it's a real gun and that they should not touch it. They should run away. They should find an adult.
All right. So let's talk about why did you make the decision to include life-size models of common guns in your book?
We've touched on this a little bit already, but this is the most essential part of the book, right? We can be great parents. We can talk to our kids about guns, make sure that we've drilled it into them in a very calm and respectful way. We've drilled it into them that guns are dangerous. Don't touch a real gun. They could be excellent about repeating the steps. Don't touch, run away,
Mm.
find an adult, back to you. But if they don't know what a real gun looks like, even
Yeah.
if they can repeat those steps back to you, it doesn't matter at all because they might still come across a real gun and think that it's fake. And this is a really big danger because kids, that idea that I told you about that they have in their heads of what a real gun looks like, if you don't show them a real gun, their idea in their heads is built on Nerf guns, squirt guns, TV shows, and TV and film, which is an industry I used to
Right.
be part of. They use larger guns on screen because larger guns show up better on screen. So kids get this image that all handguns are these gigantic hand cannons. And when they see a real gun, like on the cover of my book, which is probably the most popular personal protective pistol in the United States, the 6 Hour P365 pistol, when they see it, a life-size image of this gun, their first instinct is it's too small to be real. It must be a toy.
Right.
That's what we don't want to have happen.
No. Or it's a BB gun. So we really
Exactly.
want to be able to identify because I had a story I talked about where I discovered a gun, gave it to my principal, it was a BB gun, and it should have been a really big no-no. What you don't bring that to school because they look real. And BB guns can hurt people too. So not to the death, but can really injure people. So something to think about in so many ways. Like these real strong ones that are out there. So and that's scary because if you don't teach kids guns, what if they pull a BB gun out on a police officer, not knowing that that police officer is going to shoot and kill him?
That's true. That's a whole nother topic that's really important. The goal is that if they even if they see a replica BB gun in real life, it's better that they assume that it's a real gun and that they don't touch it. They run away, find an adult. You know, BB guns can injure, they can blind, they can cause severe injuries, if they're set off at point blank ranges. So we don't want our kids handling replica BB guns either for a
Right.
number of reasons. I do not think that replica guns are the greatest way for us to teach our kids about gun safety until they're at the age when they're ready to start learning. I think that Nerf guns should have fun shapes. I think squirt guns should have fun shapes. They shouldn't look like replica guns. But when you're ready to start teaching your child about gun safety and the four universal laws of gun safety, and you're ready to start teaching them about how to shoot, bring out the replica BB gun. Now it's time.
100%.
You know what I mean?
All right. So, what are 3 steps that kids should know if they encounter a gun? You kind of are starting to touch upon that. You pretty much, we could probably have a conversation and you hit everything you want to cover in this because you're such an education knowledge. Things I've never learned before, I'm learning today. Now, if a kid encounters a gun, what are the 3 steps that they should do?
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple of times. It's 3 simple steps. It's do not touch, it's run away, it's find an adult. Those 3 things. And it's really important that we give those 3 steps in multiple ways. So in the book, we have 3 different scenarios that the child has to go through, which is, if your friend wants to show you a gun, what should you do? And that is say, no, I don't want to see it, run away, find an adult, right? What if your friend is holding a gun? What should you do? And the answer is to run away, find an adult. We give this to them in a bunch of different scenarios so that we give them the courage to not be pushed into peer pressure to see a firearm. So we give them the courage through us and our education and our language that we give them the ability to say, no, I don't want to see that gun.
Right.
Or if a child is actually already holding a gun, for them to not tell their friend to put it down. The point of that section is to teach a child and for a parent to educate a child that they have to put themselves first in this case. Kids are very caring. They care about following the rules. They care about their friends. If they see their friend holding a firearm, their natural instinct is going to say, hey, friend, put that down. You're going to get in trouble. Put that down. But in the act of putting down a firearm, could cause it to go off. So it's up to them to just get out of the room. If your friend's holding a firearm at this point, you got to get out of that room as fast as possible. Then you find an adult, and then it's going to be up to the adult to make the situation safe. It's not up to you to make the situation safe. It's up to the adult to do that.
Uh, and that's very smart for kids to do that, because if they went and picked up a gun, walked with it, it could turn. The safety wasn't on. Accident happens. That can be very severe.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you simplify gun safety in a way that young children can understand?
Well, we keep it. This book is beautifully illustrated by my illustrator Joe Ruiz, and he makes these very clear clear images of children in these situations, of firearms, and of the community that possibly owns firearms, and just how to identify firearms in general. So we take the child through the steps of identifying a firearm, understanding the types of people that might own firearms, and then through the scenarios that they might put themselves in that we just discussed. And we keep it short, sweet, and to the point. This, you could put literally any other safety device in place of guns in this book, and it could serve the same purpose, right? Which is, you could put a knife in here instead of a gun, and repeat the same things, or put a hot stove on this inside of this book, if that makes sense. Instead of what I've tried to do here is keep it as non-political and as straightforward and practical as possible. And that way the children just get the pure information. This book is not posturing positivity for firearms or negativity for firearms. This book is only about keeping children safe from a device that happens to be a firearm. That makes sense.
What was the reason you did that? I
It,
mean, I don't know. And you mentioned this is not a gun advocacy book, and that's the way, because you want definitely everyone, because you want to keep safe. But what are your thoughts on on guns and stuff like that?
well, I mean, obviously, I've started off our conversation by saying that I am a certified firearms instructor. I believe that the Second Amendment is very important to our country. There's a really good reason that it's the Second Amendment, and that it makes our country unique. And it also it's a whole nother topic. But I definitely believe that there is value in the Second Amendment, and a great one at that. But also, I really I wanted this book to resonate with everybody in this country. And this is a bipartisan book. My partner and I on this book are on opposite sides of the aisle.
Wow.
We don't agree on, a lot of policy, but we do agree that every child deserves to be safe. And that's really why I've approached the book in this direction, because it's just as important for the non-gun owners to educate their children about how to be safe from guns as it is for the gun owners.
No doubt. And I'm repeating some of these because it's a longer interview. We're trying to cover this stuff. I want them to hear it over and over again, especially if you're tuning in at a specific point of the Neil Haley show, or watching this as a podcast as well. Really, to understand and listening to this podcast, to understand the importance of this. You're groundbreaking in so many ways, because this is so important. We need to teach people how to keep people safe, gun safety. Let's not go, I'm anti-gun, I don't want to hear this. Well, you're going to end up in an encounter, as I talked about the story and all the horrible shootings. We cannot run away from this. We have to keep our kids safe and adults safe, because I mean, if I read the book, I would say to you, you know what? I want to see this gun safety stuff. I want to know this stuff. So if I'm going to go ever and get a firearm, I want to learn how to shoot a firearm. I want to know what the safety involved in that process is. I'm really intrigued by that. Why? Because I never ever, I did a rifle before, like for skeet shooting or something like that, but never really had that, gone to a shooting range. But I'm intrigued by that now, just because of understanding and educating. Because at the end of the day, you run into somebody, let's say, that does have a gun. What do you do in that situation? What happens if you got upset, road rage, or whatever different things? What do you do when they pull out a gun? By understanding how guns work and things like that, that can keep you safe, because movies and TV don't truly show what really guns are like, right?
That's true. I mean, there are definitely some, television shows that do a better job than others, but in general, it's mostly fiction. What you see out there, what these one-handed rack these crazy badass hitmen that can like rack a gun with one hand.
Yeah,
Like
then there's no, it's not possible. Or
it's not
even
possible.
loading that one, like so the military can load that pistol so fast, and they say, "Are you able to do it?" And and you're like looking, you're saying, "This can't be done that fast," and it can, but only a few people. But you can't go here and say, "Okay, I'm going to load this, load fast," and and they end up shooting more than six more rounds, and like what? How did they come out of nowhere? These rounds. So these are things that I would love to know because I have no clue. I can't tell you how to run a car either. So it's not my expertise. It's not my area. So I would see this so important. So this book is not just for kids. It's definitely for parents, but also for people who do want to ever learn about firearms to understand them more. It seems like this book tells.
I think you're hitting something on the head, which is the deeper benefit of a book like this, right? Which is this book is pure safety, right? But also what this book does is it sets up the child on a journey of respect for firearms, whether
Right.
they're a firearms owner or not, the parents, that is. This child is set up for a journey that will respect and understand the lethality of a firearm and understand the respect that this device deserves. And the hope is that as they get older, that they will not turn to a firearm in those tumultuous years. We don't want children, teenagers to turn to guns to express themselves
Right.
when they're upset, right? And a lot of times, this happens because a child's had zero education about firearms. They haven't learned a single thing about the respect that they deserve. And the hope is that if we start them young with that respect. The goal is not to turn everybody into an owner of a firearm. It's just to make sure that everybody can respect the safety involved with a firearm. And
Right.
I really think that all parents, whether you believe in guns or not, all parents should know how to render a gun safe, how to eject a magazine, how to clear a chamber. I think every parent is owed that education. A lot of parents take CPR, right? Parents when they become parents, they sign up for a CPR class. They learn how to do the Heimlich maneuver on a child. They learn other safety information. I think that this is something that's just as important because of the quantity of firearms in this country.
100%. And, and this is where the conversation needs to continue. And this would help with regardless of what side you're on politically for people to understand guns and why we have guns and understanding those things and not having a political conversation, but understand the safety, understand we need to have trainings because you said even in blue states, 25% of people hold guns and why guns have saved lives in certain aspects too, and also killed people. So both types of situations to have that. But this opens up a further conversation. Do you have plans to write a book more in the future?
I think that uh, you know this book is great for gun owners and non-gun owners to educate their children. But for the gun owning crowd, I do believe that there is an opportunity and a lack of education in the transition period from when a child goes from the age of do not ever touch a gun to save your life, don't touch it, run away, find an adult, to the age where a parent is ready to educate their child on firearm safety and how to operate a firearm. And I definitely want to write a book for that transition period for that group of people to help them in moving a child from not touching to being very safe and respectful about how to train a child in learning about firearms for the intended purpose of them knowing how to operate a gun in the future. And I do believe that every parent that owns a firearm should prepare for this. If you own a firearm, you should prepare yourself for the eventuality of educating your child how to operate one safely. Never ever keep that as something that's only for you and not your child, because that will end up in disaster, because it will become a forbidden fruit that your child will want. They look up to you. They look up to you as a role model. They see you with a gun. Maybe you go to the range, or maybe you use it for your job. And eventually they will want to understand this. And if you don't teach it to them, they will go
They'll
out.
figure it out
They'll,
themselves.
they'll figure it out themselves. So
Now, the other thing is, if I would peruse this book, and let's just say I do have kids, but let's say I didn't have kids, and I just went ahead and perused this book, would I learn more about firearms and understand them more from reading the
absolutely.
book?
Absolutely. I mean, you're not going to learn how to operate a gun
Right.
from reading this book, but you're going to learn how to identify a real firearm. You're going to see about the different sizes and shapes of firearms. Again, this book is aimed for kindergarten through fifth grade. So it's really about showing the different shapes that firearms can come in because they can come in so many variety of shapes.
Yeah.
It's about showing the different sizes of firearms, how they look up against
Right.
a human body. Are they,
Hmm.
some are smaller, some are taller. This is going to teach a child about some of the different professions that
Right.
own firearms. Hunters, military, police. The average citizen. These are people that own firearms in this country. So you're going to get a basic general knowledge of a gun with the intended purpose not to scare a child.
Right.
This book
Exactly.
is not intended to scare a child. It's just to educate them
No. Yeah.
about the dangers of this device, and that you need to be trained and you need to be safe
Uh,
if you're going to be operating one of these. And if you're not trained, you should not be touching one, period.
have schools been interested in having you come in to speak about this book?
I've been fielding some calls from schools already. I'm really excited about that. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, so I'm reaching out. I'm having a meeting with the Mecklenburg School District about our book, but this is early days. This book was just launched in April, so we're in the second month of this product, and yes, the response has been overwhelming, and it's just more about the setup that I have personally, within this company to be able to handle the outreach that's coming to us. So yes, the hopefully by next year, I hope that this book is going to be widely available throughout as many public school systems and private school systems as possible in this country.
Well, I hope so for you because I think you're saving kids' lives, you're saving adults' lives, and you're really bringing this conversation together. And I'm looking forward to having you on when you write your next book. Best place people can go again.
Yes, you can go to thisisagun.org. It has links to the Amazon listing, links to Barnes and Noble. And this book is also widely available in gun stores and ranges. And if it's not available at your gun store or range, you can easily request it. It's being sold through a national distributor. Gun stores can purchase it quite easily.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you again, David.
Thank you.
All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.